Hey everyone, welcome to the Indie Comics Insight. I'm here with Rachaun and Ashes. How you guys doing?
Doing pretty good.
Doing well.
Yeah, thanks a lot for being on the show. You guys have a ton of experience as I'm learning, and can't wait to talk to you guys about just comics and what you guys have, what your experience has been so far. So I guess if you can each, I always like to kind of find out what's your origin story like as a creator. So Rachaun, if you want to start, like, what was the journey that took you to being a comic book creator?
Oh boy. Well, it kind of coincides with how Ashes and I met. Um, I started wanting to script comics in high school. I was a big fan of comics, raised on comics. My brothers, my father, my cousins. When I got to high school, well, like when I got to college, actually, we went to CSI, the College of Staten Island.
Mhm.
Ashes and I both met at the local literary magazine there, Serpentine. And I the first year that I was working there, we got to go to New York City Comic Con the first year that it was in New York.
Mm.
And that was the year that they had the fire marshal was called because it was too they had
Wow.
they had underestimated the capacity.
Yeah.
And when I went there, I did a number of interviews and I talked to a number of writers and creators, and I was like, this is what I want to do. Like, I've always, you think about things, and then when you don't know how to get into it, and then you speak to people, and they're like, oh, this is how I got into it. It's like, oh, I can do that. Like, I'm doing that right now. So I think that really was more of my origin, where I really thought, listen, this is something that not only is there's a process to go about it and you can go through that process, but you can also potentially, make a little money, be, and get some, I don't want to say critical acclaim, but have people who are looking for things like what you're creating find those things. And that's
Yeah.
really what it's about for me.
Yeah. And how about you, Ashes?
Yeah, so always love to write, big fan of comics. That really drew me in. I never really explored the media of writing for comics until Ra actually kind of proposed us like working together. We always got along, always enjoyed each other's writing. And so from there, like Lawful Evil, everything, that's kind of my first foray into comic book writing. It's been really exciting and just love exploring how to tell stories through that.
Yeah.
So a little bit of my origin story there.
Nice. No, so both of you guys, so as writers, and I'm in the same boat, right? Like I'm a writer. I'm learning how to color, so hopefully can save me,
Nice.
So I'm learning actually that coloring is so much part of the storytelling that's actually become really interesting to me as a writer, because now I'm writing more with color in mind, where before I didn't. But
Mm.
as a writer, just realizing how difficult it's so much of a challenge, right? Because financially, finding the right people. So for you guys, how did you navigate that, initially, like, being writers and being able to deal with finding artists in the industry and being able to release your own work, with those kind of constraints of having to pay for artists, pay for all the different people that you need on these projects?
Yeah, it was a learning experience for sure. We've learned a lot. We've been, working with artists, working with editors, colorists, letterers, so many amazing different, people. And yeah, it was definitely a learning experience. I think we've gotten a little bit better at it. Rob,
Yeah.
correct me if I'm wrong. I think
No,
we're
you're
getting
right. You're
getting better.
100% right. We definitely have, because we didn't there's a certain rapport it seems that you have to have with and establish with a lot of illustrators, letterers, even editors, colorists, people do pencils and inks. And when we started, we were kind of like, okay, we went on like your Pencil Jacks or different like digital webbing and all these other sites where we were just people recommended, but we didn't really know the lay of the land or
Yeah.
what the conversation should look like. So there people are asking us like, okay, let's sign a contract. Well, how long do you need me for? It's like, 200 pages. Like
Yeah.
we were our ears, we were green, our ears were wet.
Yeah.
And it's we've definitely become better at not only I feel like discerning who is going to be a good fit for the telling of the stories, but also who's going to be the most professional.
Yeah.
We've dealt with a lot of good professionals
Yes.
in the recent number of years, and we've had to learn who was and who wasn't professional by going through some trials and tribulations, some hurdles, and even some just unfortunate accidents. We had a colorist who got into a bad motor accident.
Oh wow.
In our first book, he got into a bad motor accident, unfortunately, and as far as I know, he's doing okay now. But he got, he was coloring our book, and he was on the roadway in Spain. He lived, and he got into a bad accident, and it was like he couldn't work with us anymore. It's just unfortunate, but that was we had you kind of have to temper your own expectations and set your own expectations because life happens.
Yeah, absolutely. So now, okay, take me through your first project together was called Lawful Evil.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm interested, as part of the creative process, like when you're writing with another person, like also for me, like my first book is by myself, but I'm working on a couple projects with one of my best friends, and like it's a bit of a challenge, right? When you're somebody who's creative and wants to do that. So take me through you guys, like coming up with like, we both want to work on this project. This is the thing we want, and kind of how you guys worked as a team to get that project out.
You want to go for that? I can go for that.
Yeah, I can start with that.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so it's definitely a process, and I think we've gotten really better with it, especially lately. But we kind of brainstorm ideas. Ra always has a lot of really amazing ideas, so he'll come to the table, I'll come to the table, and then we kind of just mash together what we like a little bit. We're very lucky to have similar senses of humor, similar ideas, or like storylines, and so we kind of mash them together, try to get an outline going, and we just sit in the dock while we're both on voice chat and just try to work it out together, keep that communication going. It's like, I see him cooking, like, all right, you cook, I'm here, like, I'm here when you need me. And just try to do a little ebb and flow of like who's at the keys, I guess should say.
Right.
So if you guys could tell me what's been your worst creative art or your biggest creative argument? Like, have you ever had like just a thing that like one of you wanted it in the comic and the other one's like, no, absolutely not. And like, what's the biggest thing that you guys had to fight for or over?
Have we had something like that?
I don't think I was going to say, I don't think we've had anything.
Yeah.
I know there's a
great.
certain villain in Lawful Evil that I'm very fond of.
Yes.
But I think we both wanted to have him reappear in ways, but I think I was probably a little bit harder on like, let us have him around a little bit longer.
Yeah. I think we, because I think the best thing in relation to that question is that we were on the same page with how we had the idea, at least we had, for the ending of the story.
Okay.
Yes.
So we knew what the end point was. We just had to, pave the road to get there. We had an idea for the end point. So there's not a lot of, this is out of, completely for no reason or out of the realm of possibility or completely, off the beaten path, off the path, as it were. I think, as Ash has said, when she's cooking, I'm going to let her cook. Like, it's like, we have a very similar sense of humor. We like a lot of the same stuff. So I think it's like, okay, I'm going to see where she goes with that because I'm, maybe I don't have anything, or maybe what I was thinking of that I didn't have connective tissue for, what she's cooking up connects that right. So, that's what I needed. That's what I needed. So.
Yeah, that's a good thing about having like a writing partner that there's just enough difference that sometimes you need that. Like you need that person to come up with the idea that you're not getting. You might have it like 80% of the way, and then they're able to kind of help you finish that. So now, so you met. Was it? So do you both have a background in writing like prose before comics? Because I think you met at like a writing group. So tell me, was it a challenge for both of you guys? How difficult was it to shift from writing prose to writing comics? Because I found that to be a huge shift for me as somebody who was a bit of a writer and like does wrote a decent amount of short stories, has worked on different parts of or different levels of books and novels. Like that was a challenge is shifting over. So how did you find that that adjustment from writing prose to writing comics?
Well, I guess it was different because for me, like I said, I had interesting comics from high school, but I was lucky enough to intern at Marvel in
Oh, okay.
2008, and so
Oh, great.
like I studied under Axel Alonso. Shout out to him, he was great, and he taught me about like what scripts, so the Marvel. Not there's a new Marvel way of
Yeah.
scripting and kind of this idea. And I carried that with me for a long time. And I
Yeah.
looked at other samples and everything, but it was different. The thing that was different for me was how you detail panels and how you structure panels. You're not writing it as though you're writing a narrative.
Yeah.
You have to describe what's going on, and it can't be, remove all the flowery wording, remove all of that.
It's a nice
stuff.
thing about writing comics.
Yeah. It's like remove all of that. But sometimes if you're used to writing that way, it's more like, oh man, I can't say it like this, or I have to say it because the artist, you're the artist, and like, what are you talking like? What do you mean here? Like, why did you say he began? Whatever the case is, and this kind of thing. So, I had to put that away in relation to writing comics, and it was at first it was a little bit of a just reminding yourself, like tapping yourself on the shoulder, hey, cut it out there. But
yeah. How about you, Ashes?
For me, it was definitely adjustment. Like Ross said, writing panels, trying to give the specifics to the author, how we're seeing it in our heads. Definitely a learning curve. I was lucky. I did a lot of just prose writing, probably some embarrassing poetry in there, who knows? But also in college, I started to play around with like playwriting and script writing. So I feel like that helped, but still moving from that to comics was still like, oh, wow, how did she get from that side of the room to the other? Like, now it's nighttime. Like, oh no, let me like pay attention to these details that, artists need that I'm not always thinking about, which I hope I'm thinking about a little bit more now, but yeah, definitely a learning curve. Oh, thank you.
She definitely is. She like I like to say, she says, I have these big ideas. Ashes is great with detail that I sometimes miss out. It's just like, oh, like, I let's do this. And then she's like, all right, well, how do we get there? What is this? It's like, oh,
exactly.
All right, well, you're right. You're right.
Yeah. That's a problem. I think especially with comics, is like having a big idea and trying to fit that in, 22 pages or 26 pages or 32. It's like, it's still,
how do I do this?
Yeah, exactly. It's still a challenge, trying to figure that out. So I guess tell me a little bit about the Lawful Evil series. Like, tell me, kind of how that started and what that is before we get into kind of your current projects coming up.
You want to take? I can take that. I can start.
Take it.
So Lawful Evil is a project that Ashes and I started working on in 2013. It's a world. It's a world where superheroes are either sponsored by government entities or corporations. Not unlike, I guess, kind of like The Boys, but not so much. Or that kind of like, I guess, One Punch Man or those kinds of things where heroes they can profit off of their likeness, right? What was that group called? Not Bloodstrike, Youngblood, from Image, where the superheroes can profit off of their action figures and stuff like that. Yeah. And it was born out of what happens to heroes or people with powers who are superhumans who deal with very human betrayals, because we don't really see before they broke up and they were unceremoniously broke up, we didn't see Mary Jane and Peter Parker in couples counseling. We don't know what arguments Lois and Clark have over what to eat for dinner. We don't know those things, and we don't know how people react to. I know Batman did, during the what was going to be the marriage between Selena Kyle and Bruce Wayne happened, and that didn't happen, and there was a quote in the comic that I remember, and it reminds me a lot of Lawful Evil. Obviously, Lawful Evil, we've started writing it way before this, but it reminds me of Lawful Evil. Bruce Wayne said, I created Batman to protect myself from a tragedy, but Batman can't protect my heart from this.
Mhm.
You can't punch heartbreak.
Yeah.
You can't, you can go to the person who betrayed you, whatever the case is, but how do you heal from that? What do you do with that? And sometimes we make bad decisions, and lawful evil is uh, a view of what happens when a person who has been pretty good for most of their life makes a decision based on that trauma, based on betrayal. And so the world is, if you have a sponsor, if you have a company that is, selling your action figures, making movies about you, whatever the case is, people love you, and they're going to believe that you are the best person in the world. If you don't have any of those, who are you and why do we care? Whatever, we can't really believe that you're anything but just trying to get in on the craze.
Yeah. So would you say it's more, is it more of like more grounded? Do you feel, is it more satire? Is it more kind of fantastical? Like, where would you say, how would you kind of categorize it just as overall as like the world?
I think there's a grounded element while still having a tongue pretty firmly in, the cheek. So
Yeah.
we definitely like to play around with some satire, bring in some humor, but there is a very like heartfelt kind of story underneath all of that, and even some of our spicier parts of the book. Like there's a really good human grounded story, but having a little fun at the same time.
So now, how many, as far as Lawful Evil, how many issues deep is the series so far?
We have 3 out currently. The fourth one is in production. So really excited to see that. Hopefully by the end of this year. I don't know. Don't want to rush anybody, but if not, you'll see 4 in 2025. But fingers crossed we get it out this year.
Nice. And so the project that you've got coming up is called Dark Spider. So how does Dark Spider connect to the Lawful Evil universe? And as a side, what made you decide that this is a character that I wanted to, that you wanted to spin off and create a series around?
He's our wonderful protagonist.
Yeah, he's our protagonist.
Got it.
Okay. And to answer that question about what made me want to spin off a story, I feel like as Ashes and I continue to write the story of Dark Spider and Succubabe, who's our second protagonist, and Scarlet Recluse, who's our third protagonist, we have our own trinity kind of. And I thought that there was so much backstory related to the character of Dark Spider that explains why he deals with so much guilt, why he doesn't feel that he deserved a better life than he had. And as the story was moving, it was like a train, it was going to its destination, but the stops that were about Dark Spider's past were either on another, track or behind him. And so I felt like giving him a chance to be seen and giving people a chance to understand who he was and what made him who he was important, because it helps give insight to what's coming next.
Got it. And so, what inspires this character? Are there any fictional characters that you're like, you're pulling from as far as his backstory, his personality, his power set? Like, is there any specific influences for this character?
Yeah. So Nightwing, Daredevil, Black Panther. I'm a big Grendel fan, Matt Wagner's Grendel. And my desire to tell a story featuring African mythology, specifically West African mythology. So Dark Spider is a descendant of Anansi. His abilities, we'll see more later. But I wanted to make him less like Spider-Man and more like he's more like Daredevil, but more like, this kind of character who was rooted in a somewhat traditional magical spiritual belief that we don't see often.
Yeah.
And that was one of my biggest factors. So those characters, and again, like I said, the Anansi, like there's a lot of I actually went to Ghana earlier this
Oh, cool.
year, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of things that I incorporated
Nice.
into culturally into the story and mythologically into the story that will play out as we see it. But
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I think there's so much, of all the different myths and stories we get, we do not get much from Africa, and there's
no.
just so much. And it's one of the cool things. I've the last several years I've traveled a bit. Each year we seem to go to Africa to somewhere, and it's one of the things I just love talking to locals about their myths and about their stories. There's just such
it's rich,
richness there to pull from. That I'm shocked I'm not shocked that we don't get as much of it. But
right.
But
when
really
you
should,
hear
so
it, you're like, oh, like how come nobody's doing anything?
Yeah, exactly.
This
is amazing. Like why is this not everywhere? So that's great that you're incorporating that into your storytelling. So now, so you mentioned so with the Dark Spider name, obviously there are going to be comparisons to Spider-Man. What was though? I'm curious to know what made you decide not to get rid of the spider in the name.
I wanted it to be kind of funny. So Dark Spider is a black man, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of it was a little bit of a joke to myself about how like every black character is black something.
Yeah.
So instead of Black Spider, because DC already has that, I said, I'm just gonna make it dark.
Okay, got
it. And then it's kind of also like a little joke, like he's black. He's a black guy, so dark. He's the Dark Spider as opposed to a regular spider or something.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a joke. I didn't get rid of the spider because I don't know. I guess when I thought about it originally, I was like, oh man, maybe they will think about Dark Spider. But another thing that actually kind of made me not get rid of it was Black Panther. Because he's Black Panther, so it's the name. The way I took the name again, Dark. So it's like this joke, but he's also there's some other stuff to it, but he's Dark Spider. But I wanted to kind of have a naming convention similar to the Black Panther.
Yeah.
So Spider-Man. I mean, what else could I could have called him arachnid guy. I don't know what I could have called him, but I feel like all the spider names are taken, basically, which is also why I changed. He doesn't, if you notice, he doesn't generate webs.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say is having read the book.
Yeah.
Like, obviously, again, you see spider in any name and you're going to think Spider-Man. But to your credit, like, there's to me, like, nothing about him screams Spider-Man.
Right.
As a character, again, powers, looks, so I think that, it's like I'm always interested in names and how you come up with things, and then the story behind some of these things. And I can see the same. It's like I'm working on a kind of a superhero book that's kind of it's completely a joke, but it's got this interesting premise. But it is we're creating the familiarity is important, so we're creating certain characters that are very much familiar. Like, I don't need you to you know who Superman is, so this character, I don't need to tell you anything, you're going to know that character. You know who Batman is. And so, but then if as you expand on it, you're kind of stuck to like, this is what the character is, and the familiarity definitely helps. But I do, it makes it for you. It's like, in reading the book, I definitely think you don't think Spider-Man when you see this character, which I think obviously is very very important. Yeah,
thank you. Yeah, that was one of the bigger fears, but I think as we wrote, even in Lawful Evil, because in Lawful Evil in issue 1, the hallmark of the Anansi clan is that they're telepaths, because Anansi taught man how to think and read. So they're all tricksters, they're mind games. So people are like looking at him like he can like read your mind and do all this other stuff, and it's like, that doesn't sound like. So it's like, no, that's why I made it like that, because I don't want you to have any comparison to Spider-Man. He doesn't generate webs; he uses sickles. I don't want you to think that the familiarity is there, but it's like you said, once you open the book and you start reading, it's like, oh, okay, this is it's his own thing.
Yeah. So you learn early on in the story that he's been through trauma, and I'll leave it to you to explain what kind of trauma and how much trauma he's been through. But how does that kind of inform the character, and how is that going to shape the stories moving forward?
So a lot of his a lot of the trauma that he experiences, he has survivor's guilt. He has survivor's guilt, and we'll see throughout this story, we'll see not only the survivor's guilt that he is dealing with his parents' death, but we will also see other people who he was close to, who had died. And it's just one of those things where, why am I here? And so his journey is making it up. Him protecting people, him being a vigilante, all of those things, him being a superhero. It's making it up. I have to make sure that these, the deaths, the lives, that the people that died for me to be here, their deaths meant something. So I make sure that nobody else has to deal with that kind of thing ever again. And a lot of his guilt, I mean, he's human, so he's not completely selfless, like, oh, martyr, just take, whatever, take me, I'm guilty or whatever. But a lot of his guilt manifests in him doing what, some people would say maybe is kind of stupid, or not stupid, but he basically, he stands in the gap. He stands in the gap between this horror, between the pain of an uncaring world and other people who cannot defend themselves, or who nobody cares to defend. And so I think that is, his parents died protecting him, and we'll see more of that because I'll go into a little bit of spoiler territory. His father is from our version of our city's called Haven City. It's like a fictional kind of like Jersey, New York, like an Eastern Seaboard city. And his father's from our version of Harlem, and his mother was born in Ghana, and so they go back to travel there. And in my fictional Ghana, there's insurgency taking place, and in some cases, young boys are recruited to fight in certain wars. And these group of insurgents, they wanted him as one, to recruit him, and his parents were like, no, and they shielded him from that. And so he wants to now be that shield for other people. He wants to stand in front of that. So.
Yeah. So, Ashes, so you're the editor on this project, right?
Yes.
So how does it feel editing a story that takes place in this world? Was this hard for you? Did you feel like, you wanted to play more of a role in it? Like, for you, how was it editing this time around?
It was definitely taking a different role, but Dark Spider is so close to my heart, and Ra has just done such a wonderful job building him out. We work together, like fleshing out his character. He's really come to the table with a lot of really great background and really put his heart and soul into it. So just watching him, because I'm just going to talk about cooking. Maybe I'm hungry. Just watching him cook and work through the drafts together, look at some edits, like look to make the story stronger, build it out. Like, it's been a really great experience. And it's been great watching him write. And I think it's a really exciting story. It looks beautiful. And I think anyone out there that wants to back it on Kickstarter, we've got some really cool stuff in there, and you're going to have a great time reading it. It's so fun.
Yeah, no, and I agree. Like, I had a really good time. I was just like, I only had a couple hours, not a few hours, but I went through it pretty quickly. And it's really exciting, and I wanted to see more. So, so that's good. Like, there's always the thing is like, all right, when's issue 2 coming out? So another question on this then is, so what are your plans for this as a series? You have a set, like, I'm gonna, we're doing X amount of issues. Is it open ended? Like, what are your plans as far as this series goes?
For Dark Spider, I haven't set a number of issues. Essentially, Dark Spider, the story takes place 10 years before Lawful Evil. So I plan on writing stories basically that cover that 10 years, kind of seeing where he went, and then stop right maybe a few years before the Lawful Evil story kicks off, just to give, space for whatever. But I do have a set number of issues, probably 15, maybe a little less. I'm not trying to do too much. I'm not trying to overload it, but I want to there's things again that will be informed, that will inform a little bit more of the story. It's not going to be, we're not going to do a Marvel deal where it's like, oh, you want to find out what happens? Well, you got to read this, you're reading an event and then, this, we're not going to do that. But if you want a little extra taste of where these characters met or what these characters mean to each other in certain instances, you will be able to check that out in Dark Spider. So, yeah.
So now another thing. So having read the book, so the book definitely has some NSFW elements to it.
Yeah.
So for you, when you're incorporating that, is there a concern as far as not like people like kind of age limits for the book or people not reading it because of that? Can you not show it to like your niece or nephew because of like how has that affected maybe your decision making? And why and what made you decide we're going to incorporate this into the story?
Yeah, so definitely it does, when we think about the story and when we thought about writing Lawful Evil, when we first originally wrote Lawful Evil, that was something, people who read Lawful Evil know exactly what we're talking about. But I think as we've continued to write, we went to ECBOC, the East Coast Black Age of Comics convention, was it 2 weeks ago? And we noticed that grown-ups who had kids even were like, oh, let me look at this. Oh, I can't buy this for my kid, but I want this. And it's like, so I'm starting to see, at first, sometimes they'd be like, oh man, we wrote this adult comic, and it's going to be hard because, most people for some reason have this idea that comics are only for children. Yeah. And as opposed to the majority of people who are buying Spider-Man comics grew up reading Spider-Man. So they're still buying it. So people have this stigma, this fear. Oh, if you gotta, and people tell us, you gotta capture the all ages market. You gotta do it. And it's like, there's also a market of adults who want to see adult things in comic books. And they're just like, they don't know where to go for it.
Yeah.
And so I think that is very heartening to us because it's not one of those things where, oh, we're all perverts or whatever. Yeah. It's sometimes you're going to watch a Pixar film and sometimes you're going to watch a rated R film.
Yeah.
That you just want that. That's a part of the human experience. Yeah. To put our decision to put that in the story was, I'm not going to spoil the scene, but that's how people blow off steam sometimes. You know what I'm saying? I know people. I've dated a couple people, young women who have that's how you blow off steam, and it's like, okay, listen, that's how you it's life. But that's also human. That's also a human thing.
Exactly. No, and I think it's a fair point. It's like these are things that happen, and I think it's not done in a. It's not like the entire comic is that. It's like a couple panels, right? But it's like you don't see that a lot, so it's a little bit of it's surprising if you're not used to seeing that in comics. But I think that's the right approach. And at the end of the day, like nothing is going to be for everybody, and so you make it make it what it is. So now tell me more about the Kickstarter. When is it launching? And give me an idea. Any interesting or unique rewards that you guys have coming up for this?
The Kickstarter's launch again late June, early July. We do have a number of different covers that are rewards for print. We have art by Magic Moon Arts, who is a phenomenal artist coming up in the scene. Covers from Kubo Art Studio. He's done work for MV Media. He does a lot of like kind of Ken Kelly-ish, Frank Frazetta kind of Conan kind of style art, but with an African bent, what they call sword and soul. Milton Davis, he did work for Milton Davis. So he has a book called Scar out right now. So we have a lot of good, it's for the old school. We like to say this is for like the 90s image and like 2000s image people who like different covers. And then we have some not safe for work covers, also some spicy covers, coming up on the docket too, as well as a bundle for people who want to catch up on Lawful Evil, the series itself. Yep. So that's going to be good as well. That's going to be good for folks as well.
Nice. Now, I guess on a flip side, so I'm guessing this isn't your first Kickstarter. Um, how?
Oh, it is.
Oh, it is your
Yes.
first. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Oh, sorry.
yeah.
Okay, so how
Yeah.
was so I guess well, it's still relevant, but so okay, so this being your first Kickstarter,
Mhm.
what challenges have you encountered? Because for me, it's like I just ran my first one in November, and it was a learning experience.
Yeah.
It did well, did okay, but like it was a challenge, and I'd love to hear your experience so far.
Whew.
We've had some ups and downs
Yeah,
getting the campaign together.
Yeah.
Like Ross said, this is our first time and we're learning, and we've been long time backers of
Yeah.
Kickstarter.
Yeah. A lot of yeah.
yeah,
But seeing behind the scenes, just all the work, all the image creation,
Yeah.
all the copy, just using Kickstarter in general has been an experience.
yeah,
Their back end, So yeah, we've we've definitely learned a lot. I think we're set up in a really good position to, get everything out. I love how it's looking. Just can't see it yet, everybody, but it looks great. Like we're doing it.
Yeah.
But yeah, Ryan, anything else you want to call out?
Yeah, just working on, well, looking at other people's Kickstarters and seeing, like, trying to get an idea how what's the best way to do it, and trying to find some sort of rhyme or reason behind why people look at one Kickstarter as opposed to, and just listening to other people's tips and tricks, like, creating a video, it'd be helpful, and these kind of things.
Yeah.
And just trying to absorb all that. And then, there's always the thing of, before we even, when we were, building up to and, saying, okay, we're going to do this, like, how do you know you're ready to do this?
Yeah.
There's no like, okay,
Yeah.
today's the day. It's just, you just
Yeah.
have to go and do it. You just have to
Pretty
do
much.
it, and trust in all the things that you've noticed, that you've read about, that you've researched.
Yeah.
And that's about it, but it's been an experience. It's been like definitely a learning experience, and hopefully we've learned a good bit, and obviously you can always learn more, but hopefully the next one will be a little smoother.
Yeah, no, I think that's part of it. It's like your first campaign is always going to be crazy and chaotic and a bit messy. And it's just it's a huge learning experience. I think for me, it's like I didn't realize how much work I was going to be putting in for those 30 days. So if I could warn you about, or if you're not ready, like it is, if you, to do it right, it's like 30 days of a lot of work. And what's really tough is, people said it and I didn't believe it, but it's like, you're going to have those first couple good days and it will just die in the middle.
Yeah.
And it's like to fight the urge to constantly look at your numbers, and then getting frustrated when it's like not going up significantly, day to day, because you just find this point in the middle where it dies, and then in the end you get a nice strong thing at the end. But it's like I think just the hard thing for me was always just like it's a lot of work, it's just constant every day, putting in work, marketing, doing,
advertising,
doing these interviews, like it's just like it's a lot, and it's rough when you're like, for me it's like I'm not a marketing I'm not I like to talk, but I'm not like, I don't like to promote myself. And you have to put that promoter's hat on, and it's a whole different animal.
I think that as creators is what, I feel like a lot of creators are like that, where it's like, I love to make the thing. And then it's like, okay, well, you got to sell it now.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's like, like I do, like, how, but it's here, like,
exactly.
It's here. People should just buy it. It's like, nah, people have to know it exists. And it's like, oh, okay. That's a whole different beast, especially in the age of social media. It's a whole different animal.
Exactly. Yeah, no, it's like, it's here and it's good.
Yeah, buy it. Yeah,
you should be buying it.
What am I supposed to do?
No, so that's part of it. But yeah, no, you just it'll be fun when you hit, like, you press the button to start it and the campaign's going. There's not, that's always fun, and seeing the numbers is definitely a good experience. So let me ask you, as Black creators, like, have you found anything good or bad, like what's your experience been like just in this indie comics world? Like, have you found any barriers or anything that for you has been more challenging than you expected, or not, or has it just been kind of smooth? Like, have you been embraced by the larger indie community? Like, what are your thoughts?
I don't know if so It's very interesting because I've been in the Black indie community for a long time before I was doing comics.
Yeah.
I did reviews to do reviews, especially for different websites, Black Science Fiction Society, and all these other different sites. Where because I didn't see enough, and my time interning at Marvel kind of caused me to move more into that direction because it just wasn't enough of our stuff. The indie community is weird because we started out on the, I guess, not safe for work, more not safe for work side because of
Mhm.
some of the content we had. And a lot of that in that area with the indie community, especially when you have Black characters and white characters, is a lot of like fetishization and all this other stuff. And that's kind of like, we're not trying to get into that. That's not what we're trying to deal with.
Yeah.
Especially with a story, it's like it's a comic that's a story. It's an actual story, and
Yeah.
it continues. I'd say that the indie community, the indie Black community, I'll start there. Like I said, Ekbach, we went there. I had known a lot of the folks from there when I was younger, just from doing reviews and being on Facebook and things like that. And a lot of those folks showed us love. A lot of those folks gave us the time of day. And again, because I call it like the Black Panther effect, when we don't see enough of ourselves.
Yeah.
So it's like, I'm gonna, I want this because it looks good and the story sounds good, and I need this. As for the larger indie community, it's weird because we run into folks who you kind of don't know what they're a couple, and I don't want to get too into it, but a couple of years there's been like movements in comics that feel that comics are too diverse or too certain leaning and stuff.
Yeah.
And we've never really had any problem. Like, people haven't come at us for that. I've never had to argue with somebody. I just don't do it.
Yeah.
But I feel like, I've had to correct some people when they're, oh, well, this and such, and it's like, no, bro, like, that's not what it is. This is, just because these characters, these people exist, we have, again, our main character is a Black man. We have a succubus who is an LGBTQ member. We have different types of characters, and they're there because that's the world that we come from. We come from a world, it's like Marvel, the world outside your window. These are people we know.
Yeah.
These people that are in our lives. So it's not one of those. I've sometimes had to stop myself even from engaging with certain people because they're too focused on things that they feel are trying to stop them from, I don't know, living or something.
Yeah.
I don't really know what some of these cats are talking about. What do you mean? Like, just write a comic. Like, just write your comic and tell your story.
Yeah.
And so I wouldn't say I've had, in my experience, had a bad time, or have had that. Thank goodness, knock on wood. I know people who have. I know people who have, like, personally, I know people who have had that issue, but I've never had that issue or been confronted by that. And it's mainly because I'm not for those kind of games. I'm not playing for that. Like, my comic, the comic I'm writing, is a comic that I want to tell, the story I want to tell. When Ashes and I wrote Lawful Evil, that is the story we want to tell. We have another book coming out. We'll talk about it in a little bit. That's a story that Ashes wants to tell.
Yeah.
We're not trying to tell anybody, you shouldn't tell your story or only tell these stories. You tell your story. Don't worry about us telling ours as though it's going to knock you out of the race or something. Something. This doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I haven't had too much. I've seen it, but again, I haven't had any people come at me publicly. You never know what people say behind closed doors, but I've never had anybody try to give me a problem publicly. People who think they know what they're talking about, but not no type. No,
but you don't pay mind. It's like it's just it's like better to just not pay mind to that stuff. And I think that you hit it on you hit the nail on the head. It's like, just tell good stories. That's it. And like, we all have a story to tell, and if I want to tell my story, it's my story, and nobody should to take away from that or stop that. Now, Ashes, so you have a project coming up. What's your project?
Oh, geez. So I have been working on, and Ra is my editor.
Mhm.
So very lucky to have him.
I try.
I'm actually, as Ra has explored Dark Spider, I am exploring our succubus character, aptly named Succubabe or Lily. I'm exploring a bit of her history. She's 369 years old. I have to do the funny number.
I was gonna say, okay.
Yeah, it's on purpose. Yeah,
It's on
Okay, got it.
purpose. Have to explore, or I really wanted to explore her history, which there is quite a bit of. So we've been working on the book this year. We have a really wonderful artist. I guess we've like publicly said it. Sham Bedin or Bedian. Oh my gosh.
Benian.
Have to do better. They are fantastic. They illustrated and lettered the book. And it was such a pleasure to work with them. And yeah, it's going to explore Succubabe's story. Hopefully coming to Kickstarter this fall. So I'd love to be back and talk about it more. I don't want to steal too much of the time, but really fun story. Going to be looking at history and the present. And this actually takes place a little bit before Dark Spider's story because their paths do intersect before they officially become frenemies, as we like to say. But I just get to check out some of her history, and this takes place about 20, 30 years before the events of Lawful Evil #1. So a little bit further back, but still exploring that same universe. And just like Ross said before, we're not Marvel. If you want to jump in at Dark Spider, if you want to jump in at Lawful Evil #1, there's the aptly named Pyre will be coming soon. If you want to jump in with that story as #1, there's no wrong place to kind of get into it. Just what you want to read.
Awesome. So I guess tell me if you can share with our listeners, where people can find you, where people can find your books, and I know you will be in person. So if anyone wants to meet you guys in person, where you guys will be.
So we've got our books on Gumroad, all digital for the time being. The Lawful Evil books, of course, are up there. We also do have some other spicier content on our Gumroad. But for the most part, there's just some really wonderful PDFs. And we're also on Global Comics. You can actually check out the first issue of Lawful Evil to read for free. So go check it out. And Rob, what else am I missing?
Well, you can find us on Instagram, Lawful Evil Comics. We're also on Twitter or X, whatever they're calling it now. What are they guys calling now? Lawful Evil Comic. We're also on Facebook, Meta, I guess. These names are changing when I grew up. In my day, they were named something different. Lawful Evil Comics. We're going to have an itch.io store soon, which is like another indie publishing platform. We have been in the past in Forbidden Planet Comics in Manhattan in Midtown. And this year, in a few weeks, we will be at Brooklyn Comic Con in the Artist Alley. So keep an eye out. We'll definitely be there. And we'll hopefully we see some folks who've watched this and say, hey, hopefully you come. You're able to show up. So.
Yeah, that'd be great. Well, Rachaun and Ashes, thanks so much. It was great. And yeah, you're welcome to come on anytime. I'd love to talk to you guys when the next comic is coming out.
Thank you.
Thank you.